Hey PC World fans, Adam here with Gordon, and we also have two of the most important thin and light 13-inch laptops in front of us, correct?
Yep.
What do we got?
We have the two top Ice Lake laptops that's everybody's thinking about. Dell XPS 13, 2-in-1 7390 on this side, and then opposite it is the brand new 5th generation HP Spectre x360 13T. Both of them are 13-inch screens. Both of them are full convertibles, tablet, touch, all that stuff.
Nice. Well, I think there's a lot of people out there who are going to be looking at these two models, kind of, trying to weigh the options, and you've done that for us. So you've laid out all these categories and picked a winner, and then you picked an overall winner, and that's what we're going to go through today, right?
Yep, we are going to tell you what to think about if you're considering these two laptops.
All right, cool. Well, let's start with number one, specs.
For specs, these are both using Intel's 10th generation 10 nanometer Ice Lake CPUs. In fact, both of them have the very same Core i7 1065 G7 CPU. That is a quad core 10 nanometer chip. It's Intel's best.
Okay.
Awesome graphics cores. Other specs around it though, HP offers Optane hybrid drives, not pure Optane. So you can do a small bit of Optane with a slower QLC drive. Can be awesome stuff, can be slower. Dell only offers TLC drives, up to 1 terabyte on the Dell. HP does offer either Optane hybrid drives or standard TLC drive up to 2 terabytes.
Interesting.
Dell has the advantage in memory, up to 32 gigs of LPDDR4X. The HP tops out at 16 gigs. The rest of it, I would say it's kind of a wash because the options for 4K, these are both the FHD or FHD Plus screens. They both have 4K options, IPS on the Dell, AMOLED on the HP. So I think when you're going to go shop on specs, I think it's kind of a wash because 32 gigs versus 2 terabytes, this maxes out at 1 terabyte, this maxes out at 2 terabyte. It's I'd call that one a tie.
Okay, so you pick your poison based off of the specs that you want there. All
yes.
right.
Although I'm a big believer in the Optane hybrid drive, I think it is something worth looking at. If you're reading the internet that it's terrible, it is not terrible, folks. It's actually pretty cool stuff.
All right, cool. Well, for specs, it's a tie. On to storage.
Yeah, and that brings up that Optane question again. So you have Optane on the HP, which actually gives you more performance on most of the stuff you do. The Dell might be faster in, say, copying files or decompressing a large file or just doing one thing. If you're doing multiple things, the Optane drive is going to be faster in my experience. You could look at our video, in fact, on that. On storage, though, as you know, 1 terabyte max on the Dell, 2 terabytes on the HP, but this is going to stick in some people's craw. On the HP, is it a standard M.2 drive slot? That means in 3 years you want a bigger drive, you open it up, take out the old drive, put in the new drive, you're good to go. On the Dell, to make this thinner, they solder the SSD down on the motherboard. Of course, other vendors have done that as well, Apple being the one that gets the most flack. I think, to me, 99% of people will never swap the SSD, especially when you're looking at a 512 gig or 1 terabyte SSD. But I still like the idea. I mean, the way SSDs are going, you might be able to get a 4 terabyte SSD, who knows when, for $5, and you want to be able to upgrade that. With the Dell, you can never do that.
Wow, okay.
So I'm going to give the category just because, in general principle, I like soldered or non-soldered SSDs. I like the option, even though I probably won't do it. But I do think people are being a little too hard on the Dell for doing the soldered SSD because it did make it thinner. It did achieve the goals, but is it worth it for you? That's really your decision. I'm giving it to the HP, though.
All right, for storage, it goes to HP. Speaking of size and thinness, that's our next category, size and weight.
Yeah, so again, the Dell is thinner. It has a smaller keyboard. It has fewer ports. We don't want to preview too much, but it is overall about 1.5 millimeters thinner. I mean, it's not uniform. They're not totally flat. So I'm going to say 2 to 1.4 millimeters thinner than the HP.
Okay.
But the HP is actually a little bit smaller. I'm going to close this and hope they come back later. But look at this. You can see the HP is longer, it's wider, but it's narrower. It's also slightly lighter, maybe by a couple of ounces. Overall, I'm going to say this is a tie. The HP is slightly lighter itself, but the Power Brick is heavier. The Dell is slightly heavier, but the Power Brick is lighter. But pretty much a draw, because once you put everything into your bag, you're looking at maybe 2 ounces.
Just a little bit.
And that's not enough to really matter.
All right, for size and weight, it's a tie. What about chargers? You mentioned chargers.
Yeah, so I'm mentioning that because there is a big difference. The HP charger is heavier, and that's because it is a more powerful power brick. It is a 65 watt power brick. Dell gives you a 45 watt power brick. What's nice about the Dell is it's lighter, it's smaller, so less weight, but 45 watts can be an issue, especially if you're driving these things really hard. If the battery is totally dead on both of these laptops, the HP will charge faster because it's 65 watts.
Yep.
And also will slightly outperform the Dell sometimes, because if you're trying to figure out where to put your 45 watts of power, if you're using it all for the CPU or graphics, you're not going to have as much for the charging system. The HP just has more headroom to run harder and charge faster at the same time. I will say though, the Dell changes. You can actually say, I want it to charge faster, or I want it to run slower, or I'm just going to let the computer figure it out. So it doesn't really hurt performance all that much. If you're like, oh my God, I'm giving up all this performance. But again, you're still squeezing everything out of 45 watts versus squeezing it out of 65 watts. All things equal, the CPU, RAM, and SSD, the HP is going to charge faster. And that is a penalty for having a smaller power brick, but it's also lighter. So I think it's probably rare that people are going to totally drain their battery and then also have to do a lot and charge it fast. So I don't think it's that big of a deal. So I'm going to call it most of the time because it is lighter. You know, smaller power brick is worthwhile, right?
And you also do have the option to buy a larger one. If you
yeah,
want.
and I will
So,
say, I did test this, and the Dell, if you put the HP 65 watt power brick, it will use 68 watts of power. So you can just buy a larger third party power brick.
Okay, yeah, cool. Then for chargers, it's a tie. How about for ports?
All right, let's run it down. The Dell gives you Thunderbolt 3 ports left and right, which is really nice because you can charge on both sides. You also get a combo headset jack for your audio, and there's a micro SD card reader. The HP, though, gives you 2 Thunderbolt 3 ports on one side, a micro SD reader, analog headset, and there is also a USB Type A port.
Ah, Type A, yes.
And I think, having lived the dongle life, and I've lost dongles and you just don't have it, it's a pain to look for it. I'm not ready to give up on Type A yet.
Neither.
I need to have a USB Type A. So to me, I give the advantage to the HP because it's just nice not to deal with dongles. They do an unusual sort of drop down jaw, so it covers up the port, and then you can actually get your USB reader card or USB device into the slot if you practice opening it up. It's not a two-handed affair, so you can do it, but I want that Type A.
All right, so ports, it sounds like it's going to HP for that Type A. Thank you for keeping that HP. Next up is display.
Okay, for display, the HP packs your typical 16:9 aspect ratio, 1920 by 1080p panel.
Okay.
It's AU IPS sort of clone technology. It's a very good panel, about 350 nits. Good off access because you are going to use it as a tablet. I really like this panel. We've seen this in a lot of laptops over the last couple years. It's a good panel. The Dell, though, packs a sharp 1920 by 1200. That's FHD plus, or I think we used to call it WQXGA. Who knows what it is. FHD plus is what everybody calls it now, but 19 by 12, so it's a slightly taller aspect ratio.
Yep.
Gets you more on the screen. Also, this sharp panel is pretty spectacular. It'll hit 500 to 550 nits. It's very bright, very contrasty, and I mean, this is a good screen. We've used this in a lot of laptops, but this sharp panel is outstanding. However, one thing going for this AUO panel, it is a 1 watt panel. It uses very little power. It's an Intel technology. They've worked with the vendors. That panel, under many circumstances, will consume just 1 watt of power. So it may not look as good as the Sharp, but it uses less power. But I will say, if you use this Dell with this sharp panel and you go back to using a normal, IPS clone panel, it feels like, wow, you're taking a step back. There's definitely
interesting
a step to half a step back in image quality that you're gonna feel if you use it and then you go back to a different panel.
All right, so for display, it sounds like the Dell is the winner there.
Yep, definitely for display quality.
So next up is keyboard.
For keyboard. So Dell with the XPS 2-in-1, the other controversial thing they did is they used the new Maglev 2 keyboard that uses magnets to repel the key up instead of a rubber dome. I don't think it's bad. Typing on it you can get used to it, but it is loud. And everything you do on the Dell sounds like you are typing an angry letter to your cable company. So that is an issue, and of course, there's very little travel. The HP keeps a traditional HP keyboard. I think it's 1.4 millimeters of travel. Rubber dome. Is it the best keyboard in the world? No, but it's got travel, and I like travel in my keyboards. So I'm gonna give it, and you can type quieter with the rubber dome keyboards, right? You can type fast, it gets loud, you can type very quiet. The Dell is just generally loud. It's like a Mac keyboard in a lot of ways. So I'm gonna give this one to the HP.
All right, so for keyboard, it's HP. Next up is pen.
For pen, I'm not a pen expert. If you're gonna just sign PDF documents, play hangman during meetings, that's good. They're both good. One thing, the Dell pen is optional. This is the premium active stylus, so it does not come with a 2-in-1, but they did include a cool magnet so you can connect to it. Sorry, we moved the laptop. The HP gives you this pen with it, so that's a big bonus. I did have Leif Johnson from Macworld, he's a handwriting aficionado. He tried both of these. He said they're both very good. This one is better at fine dotting if you're an artist, but he preferred the Dell's pen, which is a Wacom system. The HP system is Intrig, so that's Microsoft's system. But the one cool thing about the Dell is you also do get, on the active stylus pen, it works with Microsoft Surface. It works with, in fact, this system. It also works with Wacom. So it's like a universal pen. You can use it in most places. Very nice. So it has a slight edge. He didn't say it's as good as an iPad Pro pencil, which is recognized to be the best out there, but he says it's very good. So technically, the Dell's Wacom system is probably the better pen ink system slightly. But again, $100 for this pen versus free with the HP. I think for most people, what you're gonna do, which like me, is you're gonna sign a PDF document, do a little scribble. I'm gonna give this a tie because free versus slightly better is a wash in my book.
Okay, depending on what you need it for. So for pen, we call it a tie. Next up is battery.
Yes, for battery life, overall, the HP is gonna win it. One, you get the 1-watt panel as we talked about. That helps. It also helps that HP is a little bit thicker, so bigger battery. So this has a 61 watt-hour battery. The Dell has a 51 watt-hour battery.
Oh, wow.
Combined with I'm gonna guess, the screen that's gonna consume a little more power than the HP. So actually in our video rundown test, the HP got about just over 14 hours, just shy of 14 hours, whereas the Dell is a very respectable 12 hours, but 2 more hours of runtime on the HP just is the winner.
Wow, okay. Then sounds like hands down, battery goes to the HP. What about performance? People want to know performance.
Right, so these are both Ice Lake CPUs. They're the same thing, but how the PC companies cool them and how hot they want to get the laptops makes a difference. I will say the HP is very close to the Dell. There are some times where it in fact catches the Dell and can be as fast or faster, but when you set them both to performance, 9 times out of 10, the Dell is just going to be faster. They're just pushing the CPU to the limit. The Dell might push the CPU to 46 watts, where the HP might push 28 or 35 watts.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And looking at the Dell, it'll push very hard all of the time. That basically means, of course, it does get hotter. In fact, I did thermal images. We'll show an image of it. The Dell gets hotter on the keyboard deck. The fans kick up faster. The HP just tries to keep the fans cooler most of the time, even when set to performance.
Interesting.
But if you were to pick a winner, and you have to in performance because somebody crosses that line first, it's going to be the Dell almost all the time. Wow. I still have not seen an Ice Lake laptop faster than the Dell most of the time. HP Spectre still very respectable, close, very close second. But the Dell is going to be faster. They just push it harder all the time.
All right, pure performance goes to the Dell. And the last category we have is value.
So we went ahead and spec'd out both of the laptops with the same amount of storage, the same i7 processor, and the same amount of RAM.
Okay.
The Dell had a list price of $1,700 and in December was on sale for $1,600. The HP had a list price of $1,379, and at this time, of course, it may not be available now when you're watching this video, was $1,129. Wow. So this HP is just a huge value, and not to mention, you get the pen, you get this really great faux leather case, which I think is worth calling out because you take this laptop, you don't want to scratch it up, you put it in your case, throw it in your lap, your backpack, you're good to go. So for value, you can't beat this HP. It's hands down. The Dell is just pricier, but faster.
All right, for value, then it's HP. So then, based off of all these categories, which one is the winner of the two?
I would say, first I want to call it the Dell. Performance is very important to a lot of people. If you're a performance freak, the Dell is going to be faster most of the time. If you're into a really good display, that sharp display is awesome. But when you add up having Type A, a full travel keyboard, an eventually replaceable M.2 drive, hey, it's also got Windows Hello for biometric stuff on there, and it's a lower price and good battery life. It's overall, I can only say the Spectre x360 is the best Ice Lake laptop. Not as fast as the Dell, but overall, those other things just overcome two very important areas, which is display and performance. But I'll take the Type A, the M.2, the keyboard, the Windows Hello, the free case, lower cost over those things.
Wow, okay. Then we have finally settled the debate, which of these laptops you should get, and it sounds like you're saying it's the HP. So thank you for putting all this awesome work into it. You can read the full article down in the description below, and stay tuned for more laptop battles like this, because I think 2020 is going to be a big year for laptops. So stay tuned. We'll see you later.